Hey everyone, welcome back to part two of Wiki reading, and we'll continue on with John Kerry in his 1984 U.S. Senate election. That is the last part we left off. So let's get started with this. The junior U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, Paul Tsongas, announced in the 1984 that he would be stepping down for health reasons. Kerry ran, and as in his 1982 race for lieutenant governor, he did not receive the endorsement of the party regulars at the state Democratic convention. Congressman James Shannon, a favorite of the House Speaker Tip O'Neill, was an early favorite to win the nomination, and he won broad establishment support and led in early polling. Again, as in 1982, however, Kerry prevailed in a close primary. In his general election campaign, Kerry promised to mix liberalism with the tight budget controls. He was defeated. He defeated Republican Ray Shamey despite a nationwide landslide for re-election of the Republican President Ronald Reagan, for whom Massachusetts voted by a narrow margin. In his victory speech, Kerry asserted that his win meant that the people of Massachusetts empathetically reject the politics of selfishness and the notion that women must be treated as second-class citizens. Sungus resigned on January 2nd, 1985, one day before the end of his term. The caucus appointed Kerry to fill the vacancy, giving him seniority over other new senators who were sworn in on January 3rd, the scheduled start of their new terms. Okay. All right, so the Iran-Contra hearings. On April 18th, 1985, a few months after taking the Senate seat, Kerry and Senator Tom Harkin of Iowa traveled to Nicaragua and met with the country's president, Daniel Ortega. Although Ortega had won internationally certified elections, the trip was criticized because Ortega and the leftist Sandinist government had strong ties to Cuba and the USSR and were accused of human rights abuses. This Sandinist government was opposed by the right-wing CIA-backed rebels known as the Contras. Well, in Nicaragua, I believe that's how I'm pronouncing it, right? Let me look this up.
Nicaragua,
Nicaragua.
Nicaragua,
Nicaragua. Okay, I'm kind of pronouncing it right. All right. Kerry and Harkin talked to people on both sides of the conflict, though the senators Ortega offered a ceasefire agreement in exchange for the U.S. dropping support of the Contras. The offer was denounced by the Reagan administration as a propaganda initiative designed to influence a House vote on a $14 million Contra aid package. But Kerry said, I am willing to take the risk in the effort to put a test on the good faith of the Sandantas. The House voted down the Contra aid, but Ortega flew to Moscow to accept a $200 million loan the next day, which in part prompted the House to pass a longer $27 million aid package 6 weeks later. Meanwhile, Kerry's staff began their own investigations and on October 14th issued a report that exposed illegal activities on part of the Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, who had set up a private networking involving the National Security Council and the CIA to deliver military equipment to right-wing Nicaraguan rebels, or Contras. In effect, North and certain members of the present administration were accused by Kerry's report of illegally funding and supplying armed militias without the authorization of Congress. Kerry's staff investigation, based on a year-long inquiry and interviews with 50 unnamed sources, is said to raise serious questions about whether the United States has abided by the law in its handling of the Contras over the past few years, or 3 years. The Kerry Committee report found that the Contra drug links included payment to drug traffickers by the U.S. State Department of funds authorized by Congress for humanitarian assistance to the Contras. In some cases, after the traffickers have been indicted by federal law enforcement agencies on drug charges, in others, while traffickers were active investigation by these same agencies, the U.S. State Department paid over $806,000 to known drug traffickers to carry humanitarian humanitarian assistance to the Contras. Kerry's findings provoked little reaction in the media and official Washington. The Kerry report was a prosecutor to the Iran-Contra affair. On May 4, 1989, North was convicted of charges relating to the Iran/Contra controversy, including 3 felonies. On September 16, 1991, however, North's convictions were overturned on appeal. All right. George H. W. Bush administration. On November 15, 1988, at a businessmen's breakfast in East Lynn, Massachusetts, Kerry made a joke about the then President-elect George H. W. Bush and his running mate, saying, "If Bush is shot, the Secret Service has orders to shoot Dan Quayle." He apologized the following day. During their investigation of General Manuel Noriega, the de facto ruler of Panama, I think I'm pronouncing that, Panama, Panama. It's Panama, bro. But let me make sure.
Panama.
Yeah, I was right. All right. The de facto ruler of Panama. Kerry's staff found reason to believe that the Pakistan-based Bank of Credit in the Commerce International, or BCCI, has facilitated Noraga's drug trafficking and money laundering. This led to a separate inquiry to the BCCI, and as a result, banking regulators shut down BCCI in 1991. In December 1992, Kerry and Senator Hank Brown, a Republican from Colorado, released the BCCI affair, a report on the BCCI scandal. The report showed that the bank was crooked and was working with terrorists, including Abu Nidal. It blasted the Department of Justice, the Department of Treasury, the Customs Service, the Federal Reserve Bank, as well as influential lobbyists in the CIA. Kerry was criticized by some Democrats for having pursued his own party members, including the Secretary of Defense Clark Clifford, although Republicans said he should have pressed against some Democrats even harder. The BCCI scandal was later turned over to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Okay, persecutors to presidential bid. Excuse me. In 1996, Kerry faced a difficult re-election fight against Governor William Weld, a popular Republican incumbent who had been re-elected in 1994 with 71% of the vote. The race was covered nationwide as one of the most closely watched Senate races that year. Kerry and Weld had several debates and negotiated a campaign spending cap of $6.9 million at Kerry's Beacon Hill townhouse. Both candidates spent more than the cap, with each camp accusing the other of being first to break the agreement. During the campaign, Kerry spoke briefly at the 1996 Democratic National Convention. Kerry won re-election with 52% to Weld's 45%. In the 2000 presidential election, Kerry found himself close to being chosen as the vice presidential running mate. A release from the presidential campaign, a presumptive Democratic nominee, Al Gore, listed Kerry on the short list to be selected as the vice presidential nominee, along with North Carolina Senator John Edwards, Indiana Senator Evan Baugh, Missouri Congressman Richard Galpert, New Hampshire Governor Jenna Shinheen, and Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman. Gore ultimately chose Lieberman. You get stuck in Iraq controversy. On October 30th, 2006, Kerry was a headline speaker at the campaign rally being held for the Democratic California gubernatorial candidate Phil Iglesias in Pasadena City College in Pasadena, California. I think that's how you pronounce that.
Pasadena.
Pasadena. Okay. Pasadena City College in Pasadena, California, speaking to an audience composed mainly of college students. Kerry said, "You know, education, if you make the most of it, you study hard, you do your homework, and you make effort to be smart, you can do well. If you don't, you get stuck in Iraq." Oh my God, he said that shit. The day after he made that remark, leaders from both sides of the political spectrum criticized Kerry's remarks, which he said were a botched joke. I mean, oh no. Republicans, including President George W. Bush, Senator John McCain, and then Speaker of the House Dennis Hazard, said that Kerry's comments were insulting to the American military forces fighting in Iraq. Democratic Representative Harold Ford Jr. called on Kerry to apologize. Kerry initially stated, "I apologize to no one for my criticism of the president in his broken policy." Kerry also responded to criticism from George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. Kerry said that he intended the remark as a jab at President Bush and described the remarks as a botched joke, having inadvertently left out the keyword us, which would have been, "If you don't, you get you get us stuck in Iraq," as well as leaving the phrase "just ask President Bush" off the end of the sentence. In Kerry's prepared remarks, which he released during the ensuing media frenzy, the corresponding line was, "You end up getting us stuck in the war of Iraq, just ask President Bush." He also said, from the contents of the speech, which prior to the stuck in Iraq line made several specific references to Bush and elements of his biography, the Kerry was referring to President Bush and not American troops in general. After 2 days of media coverage, citing a desire not to be a diversion, Kerry apologized to those who took offense in what he called the misinterpretation of his comment. My God, bro, he's still a flip flopper even after this shit. Oh God. Okay, first presidential term of Obama. During the first term of the presidency of Barack Obama, a fellow Democrat, Kerry was described as a go-to guy for Obama on matters of international affairs. A Washington Post report in May 2011 stated that Kerry has emerged in the past few years as an important envoy for Afghanistan and Pakistan during times of crisis. As he undertook another trip to the two countries, the killing of Osama bin Laden has generated perhaps the most important crossroads yet. The report continued as the senator spoke at the press conference and prepared to fly from Kabul to Pakistan. Among matters discussed during the May visit to Pakistan, under the general rubric of recollaborating the bilateral relationship, Kerry sought and retrieved from the Pakistanis the tail section of the U.S. helicopter, is that like a typo there? Which had to be abandoned at Abbottabad. Oh, dude, how do I pronounce that? I heard of this before, but let me just make sure.
Abbottabad.
Abbottabad. Okay. Abandoned Abbottabad during the bin Laden strike. In 2013, Kerry met with the Pakistan's Army's General Asfaq Parvez Kanyana to discuss the peace process with the Taliban in Afghanistan. Okay. Voting record. Overall, most analysts place Kerry's voting record on the left within the Senate Democratic caucus. During the 2004 presidential election, he was portrayed as a staunch liberal by conservative groups in the Bush campaign, who often noted that in 2003, Kerry was rated the top Senate liberal by National Journal. However, the rating was based on only voting on legislation within the past year. In fact, in terms of career voting records, the National Journey found that Kerry is the 11th most liberal member of the Senate. Most uh, analysts found that Kerry is the least slightly more liberal than the typical at least slightly more liberal than the typical Democrat senator. Kerry has stated that he opposes privatizing Social Security, supports abortion rights for adult women and minors, supports same-sex marriage, opposes capital punishment except for terrorists, supports most gun control laws, and generally a supporter of trade agreements. In some of these, as in the case of abortion, Kerry distinguishes his personal views as aligned with the Catholic faith, but believes that separation of church and state demands that he had not legislate his religious beliefs upon those who do not share those beliefs. Kerry supported the North American Free Trade Agreement in most favored nation status for China, but opposed the Central America Free Trade Agreement. In July 1997, Kerry joined his Senate colleagues in voting against the ratification of the Kyoto Treaty on Global Warming without, I believe that's how you, yeah, I remember the Kyoto Treaty. Let me, oops. Uh,
Kyoto.
Kyoto. Okay. Kyoto Treaty on Global Warming. Without greenhouse gas emission limits on nations deemed developing, including India and China. Since then, Kerry has attacked President Bush, charging him with the opposition to international efforts to combat global warming. But he voted against it. Oh my god, bro. No wonder he's being a flip flopper. On October 1st, 2008, Kerry voted for the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008, also known as the TARP bailout. So Iraq. In the end of the up In the lead up to the Iraq War, Kerry said on October 9, 2002, I will be voting to give the President of the United States the authority to use force if necessary to disarm Saddam Hussein because I believe that the deadly arsenal of weapons of mass destruction in the hands is a real and great threat to our security. Bush relied on that resolution in ordering the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Kerry also gave on January 23, 2003, a speech to Georgetown University saying, without question, we need to disarm Saddam Hussein. He is a brutal, murderous dictator leading an oppressive regime. He presents a particularly grievous threat because he is so consistently prone to miscalculation. So the threat of Saddam Hussein with the weapons of mass destruction is real. Kerry did, however, warn that the administration should exhaust its diplomatic avenues before launching war. Mr. President, do not rush to war. Take the time to build the coalition because it's not winning the war that's hard, it's winning the peace that's hard. After the invasion of Iraq, with no weapons of mass destruction were found, Kerry strongly criticized Bush, contending that he had misled the country. When the President of the United States looks at you and tells you something, there should be some trust. In 2011, Kerry supported American military action in Libya. All right, leadership. Kerry chaired the Senate Select Committee of the POW/MIA affairs from 1991 to 1993. The committee's report, which Kerry endorsed, stated there is no compelling evidence that proves that any American remains alive in the captivity in Southeast Asia. In 1994, the Senate passed a resolution sponsored by Kerry and fellow Vietnam veteran John McCain that called for the end of the existing trade embargo against Vietnam. It was intended to pave the way for normalization. In 1995, President Bill Clinton normalized diplomatic relations with the country of Vietnam. Kerry was the chairman of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee from 1987 to 1989. He was reelected to the Senate in 1996 after winning re-election against the then governor of Massachusetts, Republican William Weld, 2002 and 2008. In January 2009, Kerry replaced Joe Biden as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. As a role model for campus leaders across the nation and strong advocate for global development, Kerry was honored by Millennium Campus Network, or MCN, as the Global Generation Award winner in 2011. All right, committee assignments. During his tenure, Kerry served as 4 Senate committees and 9 subcommittees. So let's get started. So, Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, Subcommittee on Aviation Operations, Safety, and Security, Subcommittee on Communications, Technology, and the Internet, chairman of that. Subcommittee on Competitiveness, Innovation, and Export Promotion. Subcommittee on Oceans, Atmospheres, Fisheries, and Coast Guard. Subcommittee on Science and Space. Subcommittee on Surface Transportation and Merchant Marine Infrastructure Safety and Security. Committee on Finance. Subcommittee on Healthcare, Subcommittee on Energy, Natural Resource and Infrastructure, Subcommittee on International Trade, Customs and Global Competitiveness, Committee on Foreign Relations, so chairman from 2009 to 2013, Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe, and Joint Selection Committee on Deficit Reduction. All right, caucus memberships. Congressional bicom. How do you pronounce that?
Bicameral.
Bicameral. Okay. Congressional bicameral high-speed intercity rail caucus, Congressional Internet Caucus, Congressional Vietnam Era Veterans Caucus co-chair, International Conservation Caucus, Senate Prosecutors Caucus co-chair, Senate Oceans Caucus, from the beginning of the 113th United States Congress until his resignation, Kerry ranked as the seventh most senior U.S. Senator due to the longevity of Ted Kennedy's service. Kerry was the most senior junior senator in the 111th United States Congress. On Tuesday, August 25th, 2009, Kerry became the senior senator from Massachusetts following Ted Kennedy's death. All right. Areas of concern in the bills Kerry introduced to the Senate, including small business concerns, education, terrorism, veterans, and POW MIA issues, and marine resource protection. A full list of Kerry's sponsored legislation was available on his Senate website. During his Senate career, Kerry was a primary sponsor of the following bills, excluding resolutions and amendments sponsored. This table does not count bills which Kerry co-sponsored. Wow. A lot of bills. A chronological list of various bills and resolutions sponsored by Kerry follows. A concurrent resolution condemning North Korea's support for terrorist activities, measure passed Senate amended 100th Congress. A resolution relating to declassification of documents, files, and other materials pertaining to POWs and MIAs, agreed to without amendment, 100th Congress. A bill to authorize appropriations to carry out the National Sea Grant College Program Act and for other purposes, signed by President. A bill to amend the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 to prohibit certain transactions with respect to managed accounts, referred to the Committee 102nd Congress. A bill to authorize appropriations for the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972 and to improve the program to reduce the incidental taking of marine mammals during the course of commercial fishing operations or for other purposes became Public Law 103-238, 103rd Congress. A bill to amend the Small Business Act to enhance the business development opportunities of small business concerns owned and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals and for other purposes, referred to Committee 103rd Congress. A bill to designate a portion of the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord rivers as a component of the National Wild and Scenic River System passed without objection, 105th Congress. A bill to amend the Small Business Act with respect to Women's Business Center program became law, 106, 165, 106th Congress. A bill to authorize the Small Business Administration to provide financial and business development assistance to military reservist small businesses and for other purposes, referred to Committee 106th Congress. A bill to amend the Small Business Act with respect to the microloan program and for other purposes, ordered to be reported 107 Congress. A bill to reauthorize the Small Business Technology Transfer Program and for other purposes became Public Law 107/50 107 Congress, a bill to provide assistance to small business concerned adversely impacted by the terrorist attacks against the United States on September 11, 2001, and for other purposes referred to Committee 107 Congress, a bill to provide emergency assistance to non-farm related small business concerns that had suffered substantial economic harm from drought, referred to Committee 108 Congress, the Building and Upgrading Infrastructure for Long-Term Development (BUILD) Act, described by the National Taxpayers Union Foundation as its most expensive bill of the week when it was introduced to the Senate in 2011. All right, now we're getting into the presidential politics. All right. All right, so the 2000 presidential campaign. All right, in 2004 Democratic presidential primaries, John Kerry defeated several Democratic rivals, including Senator John Edwards, Democrat from North Carolina, former Vermont Governor Howard Dean, and retired Army General Wesley Clark. His victory in Iowa caucuses is widely believed to be the tipping point where Kerry revived his sagging campaign in New Hampshire in the February 3, 2004 primary states like Arizona, South Carolina, and New Mexico. Kerry then went on to win landslide victories in Nevada and Wisconsin. Kerry thus won the Democratic nomination to run for President of the United States against incumbent George W. Bush. On July 6, 2004, he announced the selection of John Edwards as his running mate. Democrat strategist Bob Shroom was Kerry's 2004 campaign advisor, wrote on the article in Time magazine claiming that after the election, Kerry said that he wished he had never picked Edwards and that the two had stopped speaking to each other. In the subsequent appearance on ABC's The Week, Kerry refused to respond to Shroom's allegation, calling it a ridiculous waste of time. During his bid to be elected president in 2004, Kerry frequently criticized President George W. Bush for starting the Iraq War. While Kerry had initially voted in support of authorizing President Bush to force in dealing with Saddam Hussein, he voted against an $87 billion supplement appropriations bill to pay for the subsequent war. His statement on March 16, 2004, "I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it," helped the Bush campaign to paint him as a flip-flopper and has been cited as contributing to Kerry's defeat. On November 3, 2004, Kerry conceded the race. Kerry won 59.3 million votes, or 59.03 million votes, or 48.3% of the popular vote, while Bush won 62.04 million votes, or 50.7% of the popular vote. Kerry carried states with a total of 252 electoral votes. One Kerry selector voted for Kerry's running mate Edwards, so the final tally Kerry had 251 electoral votes to Bush's 286. He was the first Democrat since Michael Dukakis in 1988 to lose the popular vote in a presidential election, and he was also the last Democrat until Kamala Harris in 2004 to do so. All right, endorsements of Obama in 2008 and 2012. Immediately after the 2004 election, some Democrats mentioned Kerry as a possible contender for the 2008 Democratic nomination. His brother said such a campaign was convincible, and Kerry himself reported said a farewell party for his 2004 campaign staff that there's always another 4 years. Kerry's established a separate political action committee, Keeping America's Promise, which declared as a mandate a Democratic Congress will restore accountability to Washington and help change a disaster course in Iraq, and raise money and channel contributions to the Democratic candidates in state and federal races. Through Keeping Americans Promise in 2005, Kerry raised over $5.5 million for other Democrats up and down the ballot. Through his campaign account and his political action committee, the Kerry campaign operation generated more than $10 million for various party committees and 179 candidates for U.S. House, Senate, state, and local offices in 42 states, focusing on midterm elections during the 2000 election cycle. Cumulatively, cum, cumul, oh my God. Come on, man. I know how to pronounce this shit. All right.
Cumulatively.
Cumulatively. Okay, cumulatively, John Kerry has done as much, if not more, than any other individual senator. Hassan Namaz, the National Finance Chairman of the DSCC, said on January 10, 2008, Kerry endorsed Illinois Senator Barack Obama for president in the 2008 Democratic presidential primaries, in which Kerry's 2000 running mate Edwards was also the candidate. Kerry was mentioned as a possible vice presidential candidate for Senator Obama, although fellow Senator Joe Biden was eventually chosen. After Biden's acceptance of the vice presidential nomination, speculation arose that John Kerry would be the candidate for Secretary of State in the Obama administration. However, Senator Hillary Clinton was offered the position. During the 2012 Obama re-election campaign, Kerry participated in a one-on-one debate prep with the president, impersonating Republican candidate Mitt Romney. Subsequent endorsements. In February 2014, Kerry answered in an interview that he would not run in the 2016 presidential election. In August 2015, Kerry, serving as the Secretary of State, declared he would remain neutral during the 2016 Democratic presidential primaries after Hillary Clinton became the party's presumptive nominee, the first female major party presidential nominee in the United States history. Kerry described it as a truly historical moment worth celebrating. On December 5, 2019, Kerry endorsed Joe Biden's campaign for the 2020 Democratic nomination for president, saying he would be ready on day one to put back together the country and the world that Donald Trump has broken apart. And asserting that Joe will defeat Joe Biden next November, he is the candidate with the wisdom and standing to fix that what Trump has broken, to restore the place in our world and improve the lives of the working people here at home. Kerry delivered a speech as part of the 2020 Democratic National Convention, characterizing the foreign policy of the first Trump presidency as a continuous blooper reel. In July 2024, Kerry endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris' campaign in the 2024 presidential election. Secretary of State nomination and confirmation. On December 15, 2012, several news outlets reported that President Barack Obama would nominate Kerry to succeed Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. After Susan Rice, widely seen as Obama's preferred choice, withdrew her name from consideration, citing a politicized confirmation process following criticism of response to the 2012 Benghazi attack. On December 21st, Obama proposed the nomination, which received positive commentary. His confirmation hearing took place on January 24, 2013, before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the same panel where he first testified in 1971. The committee unanimously voted to approve him on January 29, 2013, and on the same day, the full Senate confirmed him on a vote of 94 to 3. In a letter of Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, Kerry announced his resignation from the Senate effective February 1st. Kerry was sworn in as Secretary of State on February 1st, 2013. While serving as Secretary of State, Kerry spoke in the French language on several occasions in his official capacity. After 6 months of rigorous diplomacy within the Middle East, Kerry was able to have Israeli and Palestinian negotiators agree to start the 2013-2014 Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. Senior U.S. officials stated that two sides were able to meet on July 30th, 2013 at the State Department without American mediators following a dinner that previous evening hosted by Kerry. On September 27, 2013, he met with the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif during the P5+1 in Iran summit, which eventually led to the JCPOA nuclear agreement. It was the highest level direct contract between the United States and Iran in the last 6 years, and made him the first U.S. Secretary of State to have met with his Iranian counterpart since the 1979 Iranian Revolution. In the State Department, Kerry quickly earned a reputation for being aloof, keeping to himself and not bothering to read staff memos. Career State Department officials complained that power became too centralized under Kerry's leadership, which slowed department operations when Kerry was on frequent overseas trips. Others in state described Kerry as having a kind of diplomatic attention deficient disorder, as he shifted from topic to topic instead of focusing on long-term strategy. When asked whenever he was traveling too much, he responded, "Hell no, I'm not slowing down." Despite Kerry's early achievements, morale at state was lower than under Hillary Clinton. According to department employees, however, after Kerry's first months in the State Department, a Gallup poll found he had a high approval rating among Americans as Secretary of State. After a year, another poll showed Kerry's favorability continued to rise. Less than 2 years into Kerry's term, the Foreign Policy Magazine 2014 Ivory Tower survey of international relations scholars asked who was the most effective U.S. Secretary of State in the past 50 years. John Kerry and Lawrence Eagleburger tied for 11th place out of the 15 confirmed Secretaries of State in that period. In January 2014, having met with the Vatican Secretary of State Archbishop Pietro Parolin, Kerry said, "We touch on just every major issue that we're both working on. There are issues concerned to all of us. First of all, we talked in great length about Syria, and I was particularly appreciative for the Archbishop's raising the issue, and equally grateful for the Holy Father's comment, the Pope's comments yesterday regarding his support for the Geneva II process. We welcome that support. It is also very important to have broad support. I know that the Pope is particularly concerned about the massive numbers of displaced human beings and the violence that has taken over 130,000 lives." All right. Kerry said the United States supported the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen because Saudi Arabia, an ally, was threatened very directly by the takeover of neighboring Yemen by the Houthis, but noted that the United States would not reflexively support Saudi Arabia's proxy wars against Iran. On December 28, 2016, soon after United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334 passed, 14-0, with the U.S. abstaining, Kerry joined the rest of the UN Secretary Council in strongly criticizing Israel's settlement policies in a speech. His speech and criticisms met negative rejections from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, while UK Prime Minister Theresa May distanced from the UK from Kerry's strong-worded speech in what appeared to be an attempt to build bridges with the incoming Trump administration. Kerry's speech received positive reaction from Arab nations, but some criticized his remarks as too little, too late from the outgoing administration. Hmm. Wow. Okay. Syria. The following August 21st, 2013, chemical attacks on the Ghouta suburbs Damascus attributed to Syrian government forces. Kerry became its leading advocate for the use of military force against the Syrian government for what he called a despot's brutal and flagrant use of chemical weapons. On September 9th, in response to a reporter's question about whether Syrian President Bashar al-Assad could convert a military strike, Kerry said he could turn over every single bit of his chemical weapons into the international community in the next week. Turn it over all of it without delay and allow full and total accounting for that. But he isn't about to do that. But he isn't about to do it. And it can't be done, obviously. This unscripted remark uh, initiated a process that would lead to the Syrian agreeing to relinquish and destroy its chemical weapons arsenal, as Russia treated Kerry's statement as a serious proposal. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Russia would work immediately to convince Syria to relinquish and destroy its large chemical weapons arsenal. Syria quickly welcomed this proposal, and on September 14th, The UN formally accepted Syria's application to join the convention banning chemical weapons, and separately, the US and Russia agreed to plan to eliminate Syria's chemical weapons by the middle of 2014. Leading Kerry to declare on July 20th, 2014, we struck a deal where we got 100% of the chemical weapons out. In September 28th, the UN Security Council passed a resolution ordering the destruction of Syria's chemical weapons and condemning the August 21st Gato attack. Gata attack. All right. Latin America. In a speech before the Organization of American States in November 2013, Kerry remarked that the end of the Monroe Doctrine was over. He went on to explain the relationship that we seek, that we have worked hard to foster, is not about the United States Declaration about how and when we will intervene in the affairs of other American states. It's about how our countries view one another as equals, sharing responsibilities, cooperating on security issues, and adhering not to a doctrine, but to the decisions that we make as partners to advance the values and interests that we share. All right, environmentalism. In April 2016, he signed the Paris Climate Accords at the United Nations in New York. On November 11, 2016, Kerry became the first Secretary of State and the highest ranking U.S. official to date visit Antarctica. Kerry spent 2 days on the continent meeting with researchers and staying overnight at the McMurdo Station. No, McMurdo Station. Mardo, however you pronounce that. In 1994, Kerry led opposition to continue funding for the Integral Fast Reactor, which resulted in the end of funding for the project. However, in the light of increasing concerns regarding climate change in 2017, Kerry reversed his position on nuclear power, saying, given this challenge we face today, and given the progress of fourth generation nuclear, go for it. No alternative, zero emissions. Global Connect Initiative. In September 2015, the U.S. Department of State unveiled a new initiative called Global Connect, which sought to provide internet access to more than 1.5 billion people around the world within 5 years. In 2016, the partnership of the OPIC, Kerry announced an investment of $171 million to enable a low-cost and rapidly scalable wireless broadband network in India. The OPIC's financing is aimed at helping its Indian partner, Tenoka Digital Networks, to provide internet through wireless technology. Out of government, 2017 to 2021. Kerry retired from his diplomatic work following the end of the Obama administration on January 20th, 2017. He did not attend Donald Trump's inauguration on that day, and the following day took part in the 2017 Women's March in Washington, D.C. Kerry took a strong stand against Trump policies and joined a filing brief arguing against Trump's executive order banning entries of persons from 7 Muslim countries. In November 2018, in the Guardian Live conversation with Andrew Ronsley, sponsored by The Guardian at London's Central Hall, Kerry discussed several issues which have developed further since his tenure as Secretary of State, including migration in Europe and climate change. Following retirement from government service, Kerry signed an agreement with Simon and Schuster for publishing his planned memoirs dealing with his life, his career in government. In September 2018, he published Every Day is Extra. Alright, leak audio tape. On April 25th, 2021, the New York Times published content from a leaked audio tape of the 3-hour tape conversation between economics Saadi Lalaz and Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif. The tape conversation was connected to an oral history project known as In the Islamic Republic the Military Field Rules, which documents the work of Iran's current administration. The tape was obtained by the London-based news channel in Iran International. In the tape, the Times referred to it as an extraordinary. Zarif's then Secretary of State Kerry told him that Israel attacked Iranian assets in Syria at least 200 times. Although the tape has not been verified, the spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry, Saddam Khattatadeh, did not deny its fidelity. 19 Republican senators signed a letter asking President Biden to investigate Zarrab's claim that Kerry told him that Israel attacked Iranian assets in Syria at least 200 times. On April 27, 2021, Republicans called on Kerry to resign from the Biden administration National Security Council. In a tweet, Kerry denies Zarrab's account, writing, "I can tell you that this story and these allegations are unequivocally false. This never happened, either when I was Secretary or State or since." Okay. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. On November 23, 2020, President-elect Joe Biden's transition team announced that Kerry will be taking a full-time position in the administration, serving as a special envoy for climate. In this role, he was principal of National Security Council. Kerry assumed office on January 20th, 2021, following Biden's inauguration. All right, here we go. Climate cooperation with China. In July 2023, John Kerry visited China for advanced climate cooperation. The main achievement of this visit was some progress in the fields of methane reduction commitments, reducing China's reliance on coal, China's objections of trade restrictions on solar panel and battery components, and climate finance. This was obtained despite many currently existing obstacles to cooperation. This visit was made in the middle of the 2023 Asia heat wave that set a new record of 52.2 degrees Celsius or 126 degrees Fahrenheit in Sambu, Yicheng, China, which Kerry mentioned in particular. Alright, climate cooperation with India. At the end of July 2023, John Kerry visited India. Among others, he declared the U.S. will be committed to the target of delivering $100 billion for climate action to low-income countries, and no future U.S. president could retreat from climate commitment. He criticized Trump for leaving the Paris agreement before. Climate cooperation with countries in the Middle East. In June 2023, Kerry made visits to Israel, Jordan, and United Arab Emirates. How do you pronounce that? Give me a second here.
Emirates.
Emirates. Okay. United Arab Emirates in Israel. Excuse me. In Israel, he emphasized the need for climate legislation to reach climate targets and reach an agreement about renewal of memorandum and understanding between Israel and the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Israel is one of the few developed countries which has still not approved of a climate law and lags behind the OECD countries in climate action. Israeli Environmental Protection Minister Idilt Silman said that Israel intended to go COP28 with the ambition and application climate law and put the state of Israel on the same level as the developed countries of the OECD. Departure. On January 13, 2024, at least three sources close to Kerry revealed that he would step down as the U.S. climate envoy by upcoming spring. He told the Financial Times he planned to stay active in the climate finance space. He officially resigned from his position on March 6, 2024. Alright, ancestry. Kerry's parental ancestors come from the Franco family, which owned textile factory in Nostrand, Upper Sicily, now Prudnik, Poland, funded by Samuel Frankel. The Frankels originated from, my god, this is a lot of like foreign language here. Hotzenplotz, Austria, now Olsenbloff, the Czech Republic, Inzuls, Prussia, now Vala Poland. Sorry if I'm like butchering this. Kerry's paternal great grandmother Uh, Mathilda Frankel was born in Obergolga, now Golokla, near Prudnik. It married Benedict Khan from Benshik. Anyway, where was I? His grandparents. Oh yeah, sorry. I married his grandparents, sole businessman Frederick A. Fred Kerry, a musician Ida Wallow, immigrated from the Austro-Hungarian Empire to the U.S. Fred and his wife and his brother converted from Judaism to Catholicism in 1901 and changed their names from Khan to Kerry. Ida was a remote ancestry of the Rabbi Simon Ward Worms, brother of the Judah Roch Abuzah. Fred and Ida Carey immigrated to the United States in 1905, living in the first Chicago and eventually moving to Brooklyn, Massachusetts by 1915. According to the New York Times, the brother and sister of John Kerry's paternal grandmother, Otto and Ginny Lowe. Yeah, that's already done. Okay, Otto and Ginny Lowe died in concentration camps. Kerry's Jewish ancestry was publicly revealed during his 2004 presidential campaign. He has stated that he was unaware of it until a reporter informed him of it in 2003. Wow. Kerry's maternal ancestors were the Scottish and English descent, and his maternal grandparents were James Grant Forbes II and the Forbes family of Margaret Tynell Withrop and Dudley Withrop family. Margaret's paternal grandfather, Robert Charles Withrop, served as the 22nd Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. Robert's father was Governor Thomas Lindell Withrop. Thomas' father, John Still Withrop, was a great-great-grandson of the Massachusetts Bay Colony Governor John Withrop, the great-grandson of Governor Thomas Dudley. Through his mother, Kerry is the first cousin of the French politician Brice Lalonde. Alrighty. Marriages and children. Kerry was married to Julia Thorne in 1970, and they had two daughters together. Documentary filmmaker Alexandra Kerry, born September 5, 1973, and physician Vanessa Kerry, born December 31st, 1976. Alexandria was born days before Kerry began law school. In 1982, Julia asked Kerry for a separation while she was suffering from severe depression. They were divorced on July 25, 1988, and the marriage was formally annulled in 1997. After 14 years as a political wife, I associated politics only with anger, fear, and loneliness, she wrote, A Change of Heart, her book about depression. Thorne later married Richard Charlesworth, an architect, and moved to Bonsima, Montana, where she became an active local environmental groups such as the Greater Yellowstone Coalition. Thorne supported Kerry's 2004 presidential run. She died of cancer on April 27, 2006. Kerry and his second wife, Portuguese-born businesswoman and philanthropist Teresa Heinz, the widow of Kerry's late Pennsylvania Republican Senate colleague John Heinz, was introduced to each other by the Heinz at the Earth Day rally in 1990. Early the following year, Senator Heinz was killed in a plane crash near Laura Marone. Teresa had three sons from her marriage to Heinz. Henry John the Fourth, Andre and Christopher Heinz and Kerry was married on May 26, 1995, in Nantucket, Massachusetts. Nantucket, Massachusetts. All right. The Forbes 400 survey estimated that 2004 to Teresa Heinz Kerry had a net worth of 750 million. However, the estimates have frequently varied, ranging from 165 million to as high as 3.2 billion. According to the study of the Los Angeles Times, regardless of which figure is correct, Kerry was the wealthiest U.S. senator while serving in the Senate. Independent of Heinz, Kerry is wealthy in his own right, and is beneficiary of at least four trusts inherited from the Forbes family relatives, including his mother, Rosemary Forbes Kerry, who died in 2002. Forbes magazine, named for the Forbes family of publishers unrelated to Kerry, estimated that if elected and if the Heinz family assets were included, Kerry would have been the third richest U.S. president in history. When adjusted for inflation, the assessment was based on Heinz and Kerry's combined assets. But the couple signed a prenuptial agreement that keeps their assets separate. Kerry's financial disclosure reform in 2011 put his personal assets in a range of 230 million to 320 million, including the assets of his spouse and dependent children. This included slightly more than 300 million worth of H.A.J. Heinz Company assets, which increased in value by over 600,000 in 2013 when Berkshire Hathaway announced their intention to purchase the company. In April 2017, Kerry purchased an 18-acre property on the northwest corner of Martha's Vineyard overlooking Vineyard Sound in the town of Chilmart, Massachusetts. The property is located in the Seven Gates Farm, according to the property records, cost $11.75 million for a seven-bedroom home. Religious beliefs. Kerry is a Roman Catholic and is said he had carried religious rosary and a prayer book and Saint Christopher medal, the patron saint of travelers. When he campaigned discussing his faith, Kerry said, "I thought of being a priest. I was very religious while at school in Switzerland. I was an altar boy and prayed all the time. I was the very center around the Mass in the church." He also said that the letters of Paul, Apostle Paul, moved him the most, stating that he taught him not to feel sorry for himself. Kerry told Christianity Today in October 2004. "I'm a Catholic and I practice, but at the same time, I have an open mindset to many other experiences of expressions of spirituality that come from different religions. I spent some time reading and thinking about religion and trying to study it. I've arrived at not such a sense of differences, but a sense of similarities in so many ways." Wow. He said he believed in that the Torah, the Quran, and the Bible had shared fundamental story which connects with readers. Okay, health. In 2003, Kerry was diagnosed with a successfully treated for prostate cancer. On May 31st, 2015, Kerry broke his right leg in a biking accident in Scourge, France, and was flown to Boston, Massachusetts General Hospital for recovery. MGH hip and knee replacement orthopedic surgeon Dr. Dennis Burke, who had met Kerry in France and had accompanied him from the plane from France to Boston, set Kerry's right leg on Tuesday, June 2nd, in a 4-hour operation. Athletics and sailing. In addition to sports he played at Yale, Kerry is described by Sports Illustrated, among all others, as an avid cyclist, primarily riding on a road bike. Prior to his presidential bid, Kerry participated in several long-distance rides during his many campaigns. He has reported to visit bicycle stores in both his home state and elsewhere. His staff requested recumbent stationary bikes for his hotel rooms. He has been a snowboarder, windsurfer, and sailor. The Boston Herald reported on July 23, 2010, that Kerry commissioned a construction on a new $7 million yacht, a Friendship 75, in New Zealand and more in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, where the Friendship Yacht Company is based. The article claimed that this allowed him to avoid paying Massachusetts taxes on property, including approximately $437,500 in sales tax and annual excise tax about $500. On July 27, Kerry stated he would voluntarily pay $500,000 in Massachusetts taxes on his yacht. Well, honors. John Kerry was awarded Presidential Medal of Freedom on May 3rd, 2024. Foreign Germany Grand Cross First Class Order to Merit of Federal Republic of Germany. That's from December 5th, 2016. France Grand Officer of the National Order of the Legion of Honor, December 10th, 2016. United Kingdom Honorary Knight Commander in the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George. That was from April 17, 2025. Honorary degrees. Okay, Massachusetts, Doctor of Laws. Got a Massachusetts Doctor of Public Service, Ohio. So you got a bunch of these from these schools. All right, and that's it actually. All right, thank you for watching, and this is the wiki page of John Kerry, I guess senator, presidential nominee, however you like to call him. This is the life and biography of the wiki page of John Kerry. Once again, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.